Again. Minor technical glitches on this end. I think you know that we're not in our normal office space um, because there's been construction in our building for about the last 3 months. Major repair work, coincidentally, on the elevator, on the electrical grid, on the water system, and the fire system all share a wall with our normal suite. We've been in that suite for 5 years. So management had to do about $250,000 worth of reconstruction on our space, the stuff beside our space. So we got moved into a co-working space on the third floor. We're normally on the fifth floor. And as grateful as I am to the co-working space for kind of working with us, it is not ideal. And sometimes this is now the second time in the last 3 months that internet has just stopped. And since we record this after hours, the staff of the co-working space have gone home. So I have to wait for kind of an automatic reset. So sorry about the delay there. We're going to get right back into it. Bringing our guest back right now. Matt, before we got interrupted, you were talking a little bit about some of the themes of your work at Universe Today, kind of all over the board, nothing particular, but have a real interest in big ideas, whether that's terraforming, going to another star, massive infrastructure like space elevators. And you had just said that you recently got to know Pete Swan and Adrian Nixon over at International Space Elevator Consortium. I'm going to post a link to that. That's isec.org. I'll let people in on a little secret. I'm the one who created isec.org, their original website. ISEC has been around for a long time, maybe 15 years or so. Ted was their first president. Pete has been the president for about 7, 8, 9 or 10 years now. And as an organization, it's changed a lot, but their general focus remains building an elevator on in space. They're actually, part of what Pete's doing is trying to figure out how to commercialize it. And recently, in just the last few weeks, I've heard had some minor communication with my original business partner, Dr. Brad Edwards. We're not really friends anymore, but still watching, paying attention what he's up to. So both Swan and Edwards are making sounds as if the nanotubes problem is either solved or near solved. So that's pretty big news. I remain in the position that I don't think the elevator can be built anymore. So I'm not trying to throw them under a bus. I've just moved away from that project. I focus, our team, Liftport, focuses exclusively on the lunar elevator because the lunar elevator can be built now with current technologies. So we don't have to wait for the materials, the robotics, the rocketry, the communications, all of that stuff. So hats off to Swan and Edwards, but I have always believed in the physics and the mechanics. I think it's a financial, economic, legal maneuverings problem now. So I've always believed that the string problem was going to get solved. So good luck to them. Good luck to them. So back to you. What about these big ideas sparks your imagination?
I'm not sure really, but just the way in which, can it be done? Is it possible? And when? And also the kind of things that it'll allow for, because it's really exciting to think, yes, that there could conceivably be elevators to space, and if we can build one here on Earth, the potential, right, the ability to lift so much in the way of cargo payloads, people into space, everything we could build up there. And yeah, we would still rely on rocket launches for quite a few things, but yeah, we wouldn't need to launch all our payloads anymore, and that's good, because the rocket equation can be a real pain.
It sure,
yeah. And Earth gravity is kind of restrictive when all is said and done. I'm thankful we got it. It's better than the alternative, but yeah. Then, of course, yeah, the idea of interstellar travel, what we are likely or what we could find out there. And yeah, in fact, I neglected to mention, too, just a lot of upcoming missions. I love to follow those and see how they're doing. James Webb is a big one. And in the coming years, there's going to be Dragonfly. There's going to be proposed, but not yet on the books there, an Enceladus orbiter.
Yeah.
And the Europa Clipper and JUICE, which already launched. And it's like, if these missions, if they succeed, if they find evidence of life, or the building blocks of life inside these icy moons out there, my God, think of what that'll mean. Yeah,
I think that's a game changer. I've been betting on Enceladus for a couple of years now, so that's where I'm putting my money. Yep. Okay, so you've taken real world science and technology, real world invention, and you've informed the public through your writings on Universe Today. You've been at this for what, 7 years, 8 years? How many articles is that? Just as a rough guess. Is that one a day, one every other day, one every 2 days?
It's about I think it's like 2 articles every 3 days is probably a good.
Okay, all right.
2-3 residents. So
700 a year. Right, 700.
Yeah, yeah. So I seem to remember. I seem to remember doing a bit of a tally at one point there, but that was a while ago.
Like 5,000 articles, assuming you take weekends off. That's
no, not really. Not Sunday, but not the whole weekend. No. Yeah, it's
all right. Still 5,000 plus articles. That's pretty remarkable. If that was the only thing you were doing, 5,000 articles over 8 years. That's pretty impressive. I've known Alan Boyle and Leonard David for most of my space career, the last 20 years, and they've done some amazing reporting over the years, and it's great to see other people stepping in as those two softly retire. So you started the year after. No, let's see. The first version of Liftport ended in 2007. So we have not ever been very active, at least not very public. We're pretty active, but we're not very public during those days. But we used to get a lot of articles written about us during those early days.
Mm-hmm.
So within the context of 5,000 articles and kind of showcasing advanced science, it's really like what I'm getting from you when we're talking is the wonder of it, the awe of it, the inspiration of it. What drives you?
Well, OCD.
Good.
That's a big part of it. Yeah. And, people have sometimes asked me, you're generating all this. What's the secret there? I was like, well, it helps if you are obsessive compulsive, because then you just and also if you love what you're doing, that really does it there. And it's just there is an excitement about it. It's like every day you get to write about something that really interests you, and you're eager to learn about it, and you get to tell other people about it. That would be it there. In fact, Elon Musk had said something sort of to that effect once, and it resonated with me. It's like you get up every morning and you're doing something that makes you excited and enthusiastic. It's wonderful.
It is.
And yeah, I didn't know what that was like until like about 2014 or so. I thought jobs were burdensome, but yeah. So it's unfortunate most people don't necessarily get to do that, but yeah, I do. So I'm very thankful for that. Very, very thankful for that.
That's awesome. That's terrific. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now let's talk about some of the big ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to go? You want to go infrastructure? You want to go terraforming? You want to go interstellar? What do you want to talk about?
Well, let's go with interstellar because it's related, it's relevant, and yeah, and of course it's something that the people I aspire to be more like, they're experts in it, like Les Johnson, for example, and it's always really fascinated me, and to learn about the history of proposals and how we're actually getting to a point where a lot of them are on the table, and there's even research being done into the really exotic ones. That is really cool. So, yeah. So yeah.
Let's define interstellar. Are y'all mostly focusing on warp drives or world ships or something that I'm unfamiliar with?
Well, all of it, because I love that about it. It's like if you want to break free of the solar system and its gravity, and to try and get through the interstellar medium, to investigate other star systems and see them up close and send people there. It's like, well, what are we talking about here? We can either go really, really fast, and that takes a lot of work because the amount of energy is insane, or we can just pack up the settlers with everything they could possibly need and send them on their way. So that's relativistic propulsion on the one hand, or world ships on the other, and then of course it's like warps, that third category that's over there. And what can we do about that? Yeah. So the one thing that right now that I really would emphasize, because it is kind of front and center right now, is the idea of micro or gram scale craft, like Breakthrough Starshot, right? You got a small smartphone sized spacecraft with all the necessary sensors and stuff embedded in it, and then you attach that to a very, very large reflective light sail and then shoot lasers at the sail, and that'll propel it. And yeah, it's like Starshot is what is being developed right now.
That, by the way, is literal science fiction becoming reality, right? Do you know that history? Which story was that from? Moat in a moat.
Oh,
in God's Eye. Moat. Yeah. That was their design. Who wrote that? Is that? I'll look it up in a second. But so let's back up. Let's talk about Breakthrough Starship as a real system, and let's fill people in a little bit about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so the idea of it had evolved from a design competition called Project Dragonfly, and a whole bunch of teams came together to say, all right, we've been given a challenge here, and the idea is build a spacecraft that could get to the nearest star, the Alpha Centauri system, within our lifetime. So a few decades rather than centuries. And so the idea quickly came together where they suggested that, well, it should be a very light, small spacecraft, so no people. Let's just send the sensors and stuff. And we've got we can embed all the electronics and sensors and a radio antenna we need to it. It'd be, microchip size. So you can put it on a tiny craft. And then let's use the idea of a solar sail, but a more exotic one, in where we are going to propel it. And I think some people suggested a magnetic sail, so it's like it will harness energy from just the background of space there, and it will absorb energy from the sun, and it'll turn that into propulsion. And the other idea was aim a laser array at it and focus your beams, and that will accelerate it. And so two concepts went out. One of them was I believe it was actually the second place prize. They became the idea that was selected by Yuri Milner and Breakthrough Initiatives, and they said, let's go with this idea here, because that idea was optimized for speed. There was another one that had a slightly bigger craft, and it's like it'll take longer to get there, but still reasonable, like 40 years. But this one, Yuri Milner and his people really liked, because it would get there in 20 years.
Right.
So, it's like 20 years to get there, a little over 4 years to send images and transmissions back. That sounds pretty decent. And now, and so he got together a board of directors and advisors with some of the best people in the business.
Well, I know General P. Warden a little bit. He's been, General Warden, I knew him when he was an active duty general. He's responsible for Elon Musk getting his first contracts from the Air Force. Fast forward, he goes to University of Arizona. Fast forward, he winds up being the administrator of NASA Ames Research Center. He was at NASA. He was the director of NASA Ames for about 12 years, 10 years, something like that. And then two things happened. The Principality of Luxembourg brings him on board as an advisor to their space program, and also Yuri Milner backs the Breakthrough Initiative, and General Warden is now kind of running that show. So pretty remarkable history, pretty remarkable people. So I want to stress, because we're talking about things we don't normally talk about on this show, but this is hardware, and this is finance, and this is international policy, right? That there's real money. Milner is a multi-billionaire. And Breakthrough Starshot is not his only space investment, although he's pretty quiet about his other ones. So, these are well-funded, well-staffed efforts to go to another star. Now, where are they going?
Alpha Centauri. So
okay.
There has been talk about Proxima Centauri, but the literature is, I believe it's consistently said it's Alpha Centauri, but that's a triple star system. Proxima is part of it, so let's not rule anything out. And they've even said, it could swing by Proxima. Gravity assists there as it's like looping around, because we know there's planets there now, so that would be really cool to check those out.
Right.
And the other concepts nobody has really been talking about. You have Icarus Interstellar. They want to do a fusion pulse propulsion there for a ship called Icarus, and they're picking up the Daedalus project, which was back in the 70s. And the Alcubierre warp drive is something that is still being researched there by Limitless Space, and and they've got Sonny White there, Harold Sonny White, formerly of NASA Eagle Works, who started doing that research years back. So they're looking into that too, and it's like, yeah, talking to them is really fun because it kind of makes you believe.
Yeah.
It's like, you're investigating. It looks like this could work on paper someday, and you're investigating it to see just how sound the theory is, and it's there's progress being made here. Oh my god, yeah. And
I went to their interstellar workshop. Not the interstellar workshop, the Icarus Interstellar Workshop in San Diego in 2019, and I was a keynote speaker. I was the only person who was like, I think I had like 4 presentations, maybe 5, and it was how to use our experience working on the space elevator, Earth and lunar, to inform them how best to work on their project, right? You know, the finance, the business, the operations, the logistics, also the technology, the hardware, the science, also the framework, the law, the policy, um, and the outreach. How do they tell their story? So that was pretty fun, and it's also pretty cool because I was not usually the space elevator is considered the craziest idea in the room, and here working on the lunar elevator is like, no, that tech is available now. We can start building it. I'm not the craziest person in the room. All of these folks working on interstellar travel, that's a whole nother level. So what's it like being in that environment for you and then reporting on it?
it's really, really quite amazing. There's of course, and I've heard this from people way more accomplished than myself, which is really encouraging. But you do often, you feel like you're the stupidest person in the room or the one who's least qualified to talk about this. But talking to the experts, I found that for the most part, they're very approachable. They love to talk about their work. And, if you've got, after a while, when you sort of accumulate knowledge about these things, it's like you're actually in a position to ask informed questions. Yeah. And after a while, I noticed some people would talk to me and they were like, oh, you know about that. And it's like, well, yeah, you told me,
Right. 5,000 articles later,
it's like,
a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, and in fact, that has happened. It's like you told me the last time we talked in an interview there. So yeah, I remember. I don't know how that works exactly, but I understand what that is. And of course, they're also very, very happy about having people there who care about this stuff and who want to talk about it and publicize it. So I often found that weird, whenever the experts would, thank the people who are writing and saying, oh, thank you for taking an interest in our work. And it's like, well, yeah, it's what we do. And, thank you for talking to us, because if you didn't, we wouldn't have jobs. So it does feel like there's a lot of thank yous going back and forth there. And it's, as a Canadian person, I'm used to that, but we're sort of known for that.
So let's kind of move a little bit away from the interstellar idea, but then let's focus on your science fiction. It was your science fiction that led you to the science at Universe Today. And then it was the science at Universe Today that has informed your fiction. So let's talk about. Let me pull up here the link. Ross 248. Hold on just 1 second. Available on Amazon, because everything is. So I've known Wes Johnson for in the neighborhood of 15 years. Not drinking buddies, because we're never in the same room at the same time. Only I think once or twice have we ever been in the same room at the same time. But terrific guy. I know him through the Advanced Concepts office over at Marshall. How did you connect in with Wes?
Uh, like a lot of things, it was through Fraser. He and also Nancy Atkinson. She's a long time, University Today contributor. She is also, it's got a very illustrious career as a science communicator and writing books about NASA and going backstage. So initially, I remember years back, she mentioned him to me and said you could consult with him if you got questions about interstellar concepts. But it was around the time when he was putting together. This was about a year and a half ago at this point, I think. He's putting together a list of authors for this anthology, and he contacted Fraser and said, "The guy who wrote the articles on terraforming, what's he up to?" So we started talking, and because I did a series on how planets in the solar system could be terraformed or partly terraformed. And he thought, we need somebody to cover that kind of stuff. Can you write a non-fiction piece for this book that discusses that very thing? And of course, I said, absolutely.
Sure,
and that became my chance there to take another bit of what was professional writing and turn it into something that was not fiction, but for the sake of it, because most of the book is science fiction stories set in a common universe. But the focus of my part was, let's take all these rocky planets around red dwarf suns. Are they habitable? What do we know so far? What are the indications that some are, some aren't, and what can we do with those that are not quite up to code? How do we terraform those planets? And it was real fun because it gave me a chance to get back into a lot of the old research I've been doing for that series. But it also dealt with some very particular challenges because, red dwarf suns are a pretty big deal right now. And because...
Why? Sorry, I don't know why.
You don't know why?
No, I don't know why. Yeah, why is a red dwarf sun a big deal?
Yeah, well, just because there are so many of them. They make up about 75 to 80% of stars in any given galaxy. But the main reason is because lately, many of the planets that we have detected in exoplanet hunting, they've turned up around red dwarf suns, particularly smaller rocky planets that are that are comparable in size to Earth, some larger, some smaller, and they orbit. They seem to have a very easy time finding their way into the habitable zone.
Right.
And it's like, but so of course, naturally, and the first planet that we found in Proxima Centauri, Proxima b, was a rocky planet in the habitable zone. And that, I think, really brought it home, knowing that there's an Earth-like planet right next door.
Wow.
So if we do realize an interstellar mission someday, that is one of the most tempting targets to send it to. And it's just, the other thing being, though, is that there's all this we don't know. All these planets that orbit within the habitable zones, well, they orbit pretty close to their sun because that's just the way that their orbital mechanics work. They have to be in close to be getting enough heat and radiation to be considered warm enough. So they're likely to have one side facing towards their sun at all times, or have an orbit similar to Mercury's. Yeah, with an orbital resonance, it means it does get around, but one side is going to be facing the sun for a very long time. And don't red dwarfs, aren't they prone to flares and such? How habitable could these worlds be? It's like, well, we don't know. So, but there's a lot of good, educated sort of hypotheticals and theoretical research into it. So, that of course went into this project. It's like, let's look at what we know and what we believe is likely, and then how do we work with that to make these places new homes for humanity someday? Yeah.
Wow. This is an area I know absolutely nothing about. That's pretty fascinating. Yeah.
Oh, goody. Yeah.
I don't get surprised on my own show very often. I don't get
Mhm.
surprised in space. I tend to focus mostly in the cislunar environment.
Mhm.
And so when I look up at the stars, at the rest of the cosmos, I have the same awe and ignorance as just everybody else. So that's actually pretty fascinating. I did not know any of what you just said. That's pretty neat. Thanks for sharing that.
Right.
So I'm guessing there's a star like this. Is Ross a star like that? Is that why it's in the book? Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us about Ross.
Yeah.
Into the book.
Well, so yeah, Ross 248 is a red dwarf or M-type sun. But the beauty part of why it was selected for this anthology was we don't know of any planets around it yet. They're, they've been looking, they've been examining it, but there's not yet a confirmed system of planets. So that makes it perfect for fiction. We can say whatever we want about it. And a lot of what we know about TRAPPIST-1, which has got 6 rocky planets orbiting it, 3 of which are in that habitable sweet spot. So a lot of that was adapted there so that we had a hypothetical set of planets to work with and their particular characteristics. And not much more I could tell you about just the star itself, but it's what we don't know about it that makes it good for this.
Right, because you don't want this to age badly to say, okay, well, in your fiction you said there's going to be 6. Oops, there's 7. You're immediately discredited, right? So, okay, I understand why you did that. Tell us about the anthology, and then we'll dig into what your part was.
Okay. So the anthology, it's a set of short stories, all connected, all set within the same universe. And I know from experience that coordinating a whole bunch of authors with a single sort of like shoestring plot, that is hard. So, luckily I didn't have to organize or look into what they were doing. But yeah, having got a copy myself and having read through it, it's on my bedside table, I'm afraid. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah. But trust me, I have one. Anyway, it starts out with the prospect of going and how a massive project is prepared. There's a very thorough timeline there that everyone was working with. And so it covers...
what was the timeline?
It starts in... I believe the coming century, but it goes into the 25th century. It covers several centuries there.
Okay.
If I had it here,
it's not built. It's not built in today. It's built on the premise that there's going to be advances between now and then.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it does. It takes that tack there. It is still though a work of hard science fiction in that. There's nothing, there's no woo or magic involved here, or the hyperdrive that it utilizes all these principles that we just made up, right? None of that there. Kudos to Star Trek for actually trying to explain that stuff there, but yeah, we don't have that here. So then it follows through the development process of how settlers then go to the system, how they then settle on some of the planets, and then what they do to sort of expand their foothold there by engineering on them. And yeah, each story is different. It's told from a different sort of perspective and with a different focus and characters, but they're all connected in the way that they're showing the progress of this big, huge undertaking. And yeah, that's something Les has done with other anthologies too, like Going Interstellar and that focused more on the trip than the arrival and the development. But yeah, it's the same idea. I think there's even a term for that in storytelling. Short stories that are kind of standalone, but they create a larger story between them. Yeah, and there's big jumps in time and in place and so forth. Yeah.
I'm gonna jump to the actual screen just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Stay with me here. So here's the cover. I'm going to point out a few things. I'm only going to just skim over pieces. Johnson has been writing for at least the last 7 or 8 years that I can think of. So you mentioned Going Interstellar. I know that one. I think that one's on my shelf. A couple that he wrote on his own. I'm a big fan of Ben Bova, and I'm really glad to see that he wrote with that. Ben Bova, I got him to sign one of my books called Mercury, where there's a space elevator guy in it who let's just say he's a bad guy. We'll leave it at that, and no spoilers. But I will say that he signed my book saying, quote, I was not the character I was not the person he based his character off of. Which is pretty funny because when I read that, I'm like, Ben Bova was in my audience one day because he's got word for word quotes of me. Yeah, so that was pretty funny. Bain has been great to the space industry. I've talked to Bain about some stuff. Tony has been great to the space industry. She's the one who runs Bain. Yeah, missed something here. I was going to try. Oh, yeah, here we go. So the table of contents, Steve Quast is actually going to be our guest on this show in about a week and a half, I think. I might have the date wrong, but General Quast is a 3-star general. I credit him and a few other people as being instrumental to the creation of Space Force. So that was pretty awesome. We're gonna try and get Les Johnson on our show as well. Brent Zarniak has been on our show. Maybe that was a year and a half ago under a different program called Conversations for the Future. And then this is yours, Terraforming Planets Under a Red Sun. Matthew Williams. And I think that's all I'm going to show about this because, oh no, there's one other thing. So our brand, so there's Liftport is the parent company, and then our media arm is called Better Futures. And here's General Quast saying Better Futures in the Stars, Better Future in the Stars, and oh yes, hope for a better future in the stars. So I really like Quast. He's a pretty remarkable guy. And so that's just the opener. I'm going to not give away any of the stories. And I'm going to come back to this stuff. Oh, I'm told by Leah that it is Monday the 19th. So next week we have General Quast on our show. So that's going to be cool. Okay. Let's kind of start to wrap this up a little bit. You've got the book. How many stories have you written? You haven't written any independent books yet, right?
Well, yeah, actually. Do you mean independently published?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, actually, I have because did several in the past, which I discontinued because I just didn't like them as much as once I started working on my first published works. Anything I'd written before that I kind of just discontinued, but I had 3 that were published by Castrum Press, which is a UK publisher. Unfortunately, COVID hit them pretty bad, along with so many other small startup publishing houses. So Yeah, they have since closed their doors, and I've independently published two things since then. Which one was a collection of short stories called Apotheosis, and the other one was like a space opera idea called Turncoats. So there's there are many other ideas I want to write out and develop before I'm done. Yeah, it's just it is a little difficult. I found creative writing at the end of the day when you're writing about space all day long. But yeah, suffice it to say, just all my ideas come from something real. So, and yeah, if we had more time, I could actually tell you the exact moment where the idea for my first published book actually came to me. But the short version is, it was after writing an article about Mercury and its unusual characteristics, and I thought Arthur C. Clarke had included a group of people known as Hermians in one of his books there, and I always thought that was so cool. I thought the name was so cool, and then yeah, while doing articles on the planets, it's like, no, every one of the planets has a neat adjective for stuff coming from there. And yeah, after talking to a friend about, people could live on Mercury if they just did the following, and then it was just like, boom, light bulb. yeah. But that actually is pretty close to the full length version there. So
that's a pretty good story. I like that. I like that. And I did. I found your Amazon profile on. So definitely take a look at those. We've been talking internally. Many of our guests have books. Many of them. I would say 2/3, definitely a half, more than half. And we're really considering building out a book club. Just, doing a show like this with somebody like you that is just really focused on that. And then just program out for a year, 48 books. Well, it probably wouldn't be full 48, but, once a week, something like that, something in the fiction side, something in the nonfiction side, a policy element. And because we spend a lot of time talking about U.S. Space Force and other national space forces, there would probably be a military reading list as well. So we haven't committed to doing it yet, but we're definitely interested. So if that comes up, if that really happens, we'll be chatting some more. Right?
Great. I love talking books.
Yeah. Cool. All right. We're going to go ahead and close it off because this plus the other gets us pretty close to our hour. Appreciate you coming on board. I learned a lot from this. That's really terrific. And we'd love to have you back, especially if we dig into this book club section.
Absolutely, yeah.
We can talk more about space elevators and lunar elevators as well.
Yeah. In fact, I realized as we're talking about red dwarf planets and so forth, exoplanets has become a major focus of mine too. So yeah, I mean, I neglected to include that.
Well, I would say that's kind of a core element for you. It ties all the other parts together, right?
Yes.
And it's the reason to go interstellar. It's not about the tech and the spacecraft. It's about the destination. Right?
Yes. And they're kind of a big deal right now, exoplanets. We only found well over 5,000 of them.
Do you have any thoughts about various flavors of nuclear propulsion within the solar system?
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about that for a few minutes longer. I mean, I do need to kind of wrap this up, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on our solar system. There's been a lot of talk lately about different propulsions, different power systems. Beyond the cislunar environment. So what are you thinking about that?
I'm really excited about that, and I think it's there's tremendous potential, and this is one of those things where it's like, we could build this stuff today. We really could. We've tested. Yeah, and it was, I think, 2015, I think, or 16 that I got to dig into nuclear propulsion for the first time, and I was really fascinated by it. And it's come up since, and I just actually wrote an article for Interesting Engineering about the future of propulsion, and that was another opportunity to get into nuclear systems. And so the basic breakdown of what we're looking at right now is like there's nuclear thermal and nuclear electric, or the combination thereof. And it's like nuclear thermal, you have a nuclear reactor, which NASA has built and tested these, by the way, back in the 70s, and so did the Russians. So we know how to make this, and you put it with fusion or deuterium propellant, and it heats it up, and that generates propulsion. Straightforward, but it also happens to be a lot more fuel efficient than what we got right now. So that's great. And it's I've seen proposals that said we could get to Mars in 45 days using this system. So a lot of money is on developing that right now, and that includes NASA and DARPA. They've got they're building a prototype that they want to send test by 2027, I think. So and they are definitely looking at that for getting to Mars. That will be a massive game changer. The other type, nuclear electric, is very similar, but it's like we have the reactor that powers a Hall effect thruster or an ion thruster, and so rather than using solar energy to power that, we have a reactor, and that is like brutally fuel efficient, like 10 times as much, whereas nuclear thermal, I think, is 3 times. The only difference is that the propulsion it gives is really even and slow. So you accelerate rather slowly, but for a very long time. So the nuclear thermal is the obvious go-to right now. It's like, because we could speed up really quick, and it's fuel efficient enough we could get to Mars and back without having to refuel, or at the very least we could get there and we could just get some water ice and make some hydrogen fuel.
Come back home.
So that, and especially one that uses both, that is going to be a huge game changer. And so Harold Sunny White has at Limitless Space, they're working on that kind of stuff too. It's like nuclear fission ideas, the nuclear fusion that will get us to Mars and the asteroid belt. The fusion stuff will get us to the edge of the solar system, and beyond that, well, we're hoping to have a warp field ready by then. So so really exciting stuff. Mars in 45 days.
I had a conversation like that with somebody that actually works at Johnson. So, all right, Matt, this has been fascinating. We'll definitely, schedule to bring you back on. I'm going to go close down the stream, but I want to just hang out here for a second longer. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.